You're listening to the Fan Club podcast, where two polar opposites experience each other's fandoms for the very first time. Hey guys, welcome to the third episode of the Fan Club podcast. My name is Sarah.
This is Matthew.
And today we are covering Iron Man 2, which was released in 2010 and directed by Jon Favreau. It has, this movie overall, and it's definitely notable in the trailer even, is so very different from the last two films we covered. Just, it's such a different vibe.
Yeah, they had a much bigger budget this time, and so it was less... It
shows.
Yeah, they had less improv like in the first one, but more along the lines of a high-budget movie.
Yeah, but the MCU was getting more established.
Yeah, this pretty much helped solidify the Marvel universe.
I read something somewhere that is the, of 2010, was the 7th highest grossing film in the year.
Devil, Insidious.
Oh, the first Insidious movie came out in 2010.
Insidious.
The first Percy Jackson movie.
Was that 2010?
That's funny.
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland. Oh, the seventh
Narnia.
Harry Potter movie, part 1 came out. Inception. Yeah, Shutter Island, Black Swan. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of, 7 doesn't seem like much, but when you look at, the movies that it's stacked up against, it's a lot. It definitely shows that there was a higher budget, for sure.
Much.
The movie starts with kind of a scene between... Yeah, it establishes the villain of our movie, which is Vanko, and I wrote somewhere in here that bird people are on just a different level. He has a cockatoo, which apparently was a character choice that Mickey Rooney made. Mickey Rourke. It's also revealed in this scene that... Ivan. It's also established that Vanko's father and Tony Stark's father designed the arc reactor. Mm-hmm. Which is a pretty big deal.
Or came up with the idea of an arc reactor.
The blueprints.
Yeah.
There's a 6-month time jump, and this is when I first noted... Well, I mean, I noticed in the trailer, but this is the first scene in the movie that I noticed that there was a much higher budget. There's pyrotechnics and special effects and,
Yeah, it's the Marvel's version of the World Fair.
Well, no, the end of it is the...
No.
Is that really was it the convention or the...
Yeah, it's a year-long...
Expo is what the word is.
It's a year-long exhibit.
Oh, yeah.
It's a year long, so when Iron Man comes in was the start of it. So this movie takes place literally 6 months after the end of Iron Man 1.
Yeah, and in the beginning scene, Vanko is watching the news coverage of the press conference of Tony Stark, telling everybody that he's Iron Man.
It is actually one of the only Marvel MCU movies that has a full credit sequence. Opening credit sequence.
Yeah.
So, with all the actors' names and producers and all
more
that
and more
stuff.
movies aren't doing that anymore.
No, it would...
Because if you look at, old... I grew up watching Wizard of Oz. I know... And that movie has, a full 4 minutes of opening credits.
Yeah. It was something that was bigger, I would say, pretty much stopped in, the 2010s.
Yeah, but even now TV shows are doing away with opening credits. I mean, most people skip them anyway.
Because on most
streaming services.
Yeah, streaming services you can just skip it.
We watched this movie in 2 nights, so some of the beginning stuff is a little hazy. The arc reactor is making his blood toxic. You want to talk a little bit about that?
So it's not so much the arc reactor itself.
It's the palladium.
It's the palladium inside of him. He's getting essentially metal poisoning.
And you see, throughout the movie, you see, his
veins turning black, and
later, what's her face? Natasha has, a little serum that she injects him with that, helps it cure it for the moment.
I mean, it's the same, it would be the same serum as...
What is it, he called it, lithium or something.
Probably, because lithium does help with metal poisoning.
He doesn't like being handed things. This is a thing I noticed in the first film too. It's a comic thing, right?
I think it's more of just a movie. I don't exactly remember the reasoning, but he doesn't trust people but the only people he trusts is Happy.
Happy is his driver or chauffeur and
his bodyguard.
And
essentially
is played by Jon Favreau.
Yeah, and Pepper.
Yeah.
Are the only people that he truly trusts.
He gets handed stuff by Natasha, like to sign and stuff.
It was more if she was still holding it while he was touching it.
Oh, this is true. Don Cheadle replaced Terrence Howard as Rhodey. They had some kind of falling out, correct?
Yeah, so Terrence Howard actually helped Robert Downey Jr. get the Iron Man job.
They had a falling out about pay.
Yeah, they were Terrence and RDJ were supposed to make the same amount, but Terrence Howard made such little compared to Robert Downey Jr. So they got into it, and Marvel and Jon Favreau both said, "Sorry, you're gone," because Robert Downey Jr. is the actual star of the movie, not Rhodey. It's called Iron Man, not War Machine.
I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of torn because I liked Terrence Howard, but
Don Cheadle is more like War Machine in the comics than I would say Terrence Howard.
Yeah.
Don Cheadle and
I thought the chemistry
Rhodey
was just different. That's all.
Yeah. It was a much more friendly interactions than it was with Terrence Howard.
See, I thought the opposite.
It will be explained more about their friendship in the later Marvel movies.
Fair. The hearing scene where he goes to meet with the senator, and I thought that scene was like super chaotic. If you guys know anything about filmmaking, there's a ton of Dutch angles in that scene, which basically is like a certain angle of the camera that's supposed to convey anxiety and like tense energy, I guess. And there's a ton of Dutch angles. Once you know what you're looking for, you like see it everywhere. It's like a very, very common filmmaking thing, but there's so many Dutch angles in that. We also get our introduction to Justin Hammer, who is played by Sam Rockwell, who I love. I won't gush too much, but he's in like one of my favorite movies of the last like 5 years, which is Jojo Rabbit. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's amazing. And he's incredible in that movie. I didn't love him in this role, but I also just think it's the character.
Yeah, I mean, Hammer in the comics is a joke.
He plays a character that not a lot of people take seriously, so it's like it. But he almost seems like a 4-year-old wearing his dad's suits and pretending to be a businessman.
That's how he is in the comics. He is an absolute joke of a character in the comics. There's a lot of similarities between this Hammer and the comic Hammer, where they played both sides. And
originally they wanted Al Pacino.
Which I couldn't say. I could see Al Pacino maybe being Mickey Rourke's character, but not Hammer's.
Yeah, they're such a different vibe.
Yeah, but Al Pacino could be Whiplash. I could honestly see that.
Sure. I just thought that it was a strange choice. I mean,
they also wanted
they needed a, for lack of a better word, they needed a doofus.
Yeah.
And I think
Tom Cruise was wanted to be Tony Stark.
And actually, Sam Rockwell was originally he was on the short list for Tony Stark.
Yeah. Which
I also think that would have been a strange.
Yeah, it would have been odd. I don't think the MCU would have done as well if he was it.
Well, and Sam Rockwell plays a doofus well. He's kind of a doofus in Jojo Rabbit too.
But I mean, he wasn't. I wouldn't say he was a doofus in what's that movie? Charlie's Angels.
I haven't seen it.
The original one.
He's also apparently in the late 80s version of TMNT. Apparently. Isn't that movie horrific?
It depends on the version. Some are better than others.
I don't know. I have no frame of reference.
But one interesting thing about the senator scene,
the hearing
scene, when Tony Stark says that he would gladly accept the position of Secretary of Defense, in the comics he actually was the Secretary of Defense for a while.
That scene is so chaotic. What exactly are they arguing about?
The government wants the suits, and Tony Stark is saying no. Is pretty much what it is.
Can you imagine if our government actually had that power?
Yeah, I could. Yeah.
Like, we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of that, but, like, our world would be so much more chaotic.
Even more than it is currently. I'm sorry, but with these, with the hearing scene, I love the video of Robert Downey Jr. just hacking the TV.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because my thought during that was, is this airplay before airplay was a thing? So then we flash to Vanko, like, creating these whips, these, like, electric whips. And honestly, this is some of the coolest cinematography in this entire movie. The whips are super cool. There's something later that we'll touch on, that there's, like, a really cool shot of him coming out, and it's awesome. So there's a scene where he's in his workshop, and the return of his sassy robot, which we pretty much think is Pascal from Tangled. And then I have a note that says
Pegasus.
Yeah. Or Maximus from Tangled too, the horse.
Mm-hmm.
I have a note that says, is palladium real? And Matthew laughed at me.
Yes, palladium is real. It is the 46th element.
Science was never my strong suit.
Yeah, it is the 46th element on the periodic table.
I never know in these movies when they're making stuff up.
I've worked with palladium in metal shop in high school. It's real. It has an I think...
You didn't inject it into your body, though, and get metal poisoning?
No, I probably burned my fingertips on it, like I would when I was messing with lead.
I have a note here that says, I think I like Pepper even less in this film. Sure, in the beginning. Later, I like her more than I liked her in the first movie, but, like, marginally. He made her CEO, and I thought isn't that kind of unethical?
No, because they technically weren't dating at that time.
Yeah, but, like, she also goes from being basically his assistant to being CEO. Is she even qualified?
She technically ran it for him. He was just a figurehead, while he would have her go to the meetings, and she would just bring him the paperwork to sign. So essentially, she was running it beforehand.
So he's kind of like the queen, and she's the prime minister.
But now she's in charge, and he's not in charge anymore. So yeah, kind of.
Like, the queen just, like, signs stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure the queen does other stuff other than that, but, like...
Own all the geese. And
the corgis.
And the corgis, yeah.
I thought that Vanko seemed like a much more overt supervillain than the other two that we had. At least in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Because the other two rely on plot twist.
This one was more...
From the beginning, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, Iron Man indirectly made a good chunk of the villains in the MCU.
Yeah.
There's a few more that you have not seen yet, and you will pretty soon.
Okay.
In the next couple. Or probably in the next 5, you should see several more.
We have our introduction to Black Widow.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
or we didn't know she was Black Widow.
Well, yeah, but, like, it's kind of obvious. No, and I also know that Scarlett Johansson is Black Widow, so...
Yeah.
But, like, I did not expect her to be in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't think any of the Avengers were in each other's single movies.
She's...
I always thought they were kind of, like, all separate. And then they come together. That was my interpretation initially.
She was the only one... Winter Soldier. Or until after the Avengers, then they started merging into each other.
I was really excited because I was really excited to see her, and not only is she even present, but she's also, like, because she's, for lack of a better word, she's undercover. I really like that even as a quote-unquote assistant, because obviously she's undercover, I like that she still has a lot of agency. She's still willing to speak up for herself, much more than Pepper does, which I really appreciate. Obviously, later we have much more of a fleshed out character of Black Widow, of Natasha, than we do in this movie, but I think that she did a really good job of displaying agency in a much more minor role. Did any of that make sense?
Vaguely. But Black Widow is a very, very interesting character.
I'm excited to learn more about her. I thought some of her fight scenes in this movie were really cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about her, especially learning more about her history and all that stuff.
You'll learn more about her history in Age of Ultron and in the Black Widow movie. You'll learn a lot more.
Which you still haven't seen.
Not yet, no.
I love Florence Pugh, so I'm excited about that.
Who?
She plays, pretty sure the sister.
Okay.
She's, you wouldn't know, but she's Amy in the newer version of Little Women. The one with Emma Watson.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
This scene in Monaco, the race scene, gave me big Cars 2 vibes. I know everyone hates Cars 2, but, like, that's immediately what it made me think of. And if you know, you know.
Wait, which one was Cars 2?
Where they, like, go on tour, like, they go on, like, a world tour.
I thought that was 3.
I thought it was 2. Yeah, because it's 2, because they have, like...
Oh, 2's the one that Tow Mater joins, like, the Secret Service or government
They try to change out all of their gas to, like, damage all the cars or something. It's, like, old... They call them lemons or something. It's been a really long time since it... My nephew was, like, obsessed with that movie when he was little.
I've seen that movie once.
I don't know. The establishing shots of Monaco especially gave me big Cars 2 vibes.
Mm-hmm. But I just have to say, during that race scene, when we see the Whiplash outfit...
That shot was so cool.
Uh-huh.
I didn't really understand, like, why is he choosing right now to...
He was told that he would
attack.
Yeah, he was told that he would be in Monaco. And he decided to... He was in Monaco and following Iron Man, but didn't know if Iron Man was going to race or not, so he was just going to kill Iron Man to kill him, but he was in the car. It's not really explained very well how he got to Monaco, or why he's in Monaco exactly, but that's just what I believe. Oh, but to get used to wearing the Whiplash outfit, Mickey Rourke would actually work out in heavy vests.
Like the mechanism that he needed to operate the whips and stuff.
And to do the actual whips, because the whips were real.
Yeah.
It was just CGI'd with the lightning.
There was a shot of him walking out and, like, his
jumpsuit.
His, like, jumpsuit is, like, burning off. Mm-hmm. And it's such a cool shot. Like, it is such a cool shot. It's worth looking up that scene on YouTube just for that shot.
But yeah, so Mickey Rourke spent several months on a treadmill and weight training. Initially, he was unable to move around and use the whip prop in the Whiplash vest or test outfit due to its weight.
I mean, like, I was noticing that he was ripped in this movie. He had just come off that wrestler movie, I think.
He was actually a boxer when he was younger.
I don't really know much about him. I literally thought he was dead.
Yeah, so all of
till like right before we started filming
the news clippings in the movie that were showing Tony Stark and Ivan Vanko when they were younger are actual photos of Robert Downey Jr. and Mickey Rourke from the 80s. Who
both got famous in the 80s.
Yeah.
I do think overall that Whiplash is a really cool villain. Yeah, originally Anton Vanko was the Crimson Dynamo in the comics.
Mm-hmm. In the year which Anton Vanko is said to have defected to the USA in 1963 is actually the first year that Vanko first appeared in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a cool twist.
I think that the version of the Iron Man suit that we see in this movie is my favorite so far.
That's just one of them.
I think he looks really dorky when he's taking off, when he's about to fly, though. Like, when he puts his hands down, like, with his wrists flipped.
It's to help stabilize.
He looks really dorky.
Yeah, but it's to stabilize. This is the Mark IV. Mark IV was the one that he can move, like, transport with. because otherwise he would have had to go to his house in California.
Yeah.
To get the suit.
But I also really like that he can carry it around in a suitcase. I also really loved that shot when he was like, basically putting his hand in the glove and the suitcase kind of transformed into the suit around him.
Because he put both of his hands down and then he lifted it up and put the chest plate on, and then it grew around.
I thought that series of shots was really cool.
There's some cooler suits. Just wait. There's some suits.
So far, this one's my favorite.
There are some suits that will be made by nanotech that you'll watch, like, grow around him.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
It kind of, the way you describe it kind of reminds me of, the nanobots in Big Hero 6.
Very similar. Very, very similar.
That movie is great, but it's like very...
I mean, it is a Marvel movie.
It's like Marvel adjacent.
No, Big Hero 6 is a Marvel comic book.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
God, that movie is great.
Big Hero 6 is a comic book made by Marvel.
The Baymax suit gives big Iron Man vibes.
Yeah. It's made by smaller people in Marvel. It's not made by... Like,
it was made after Disney bought Marvel, so...
The comics were not made after. The
movie.
Yeah. Yes, the movie was made after, but the comics for Big Hero 6 were made, I think, in the early 2000s.
That movie makes me emotional.
That comic book franchise was made around the time when comic books were sort of
I didn't realize it was a...
Mm-hmm.
It was a
That's why Stan Lee's in it.
That makes sense.
Stan Lee's the Fred's dad.
Yeah. It makes sense that
it's one of the only...
It would be.
It's one of the only Marvel movies that Stan Lee, when he was still alive, did not have a speaking role in.
What was the Stan Lee cameo in this one? Was it the Larry King thing?
I think so.
Because in the very beginning of the movie, like, you see him get, like, introduced to Larry King, like, super briefly, and I was like, is that Stan Lee?
While Stan Lee was still alive, rip Stan Lee, it was one of the only ones that he didn't have a speaking role in.
Yeah. I still prefer the one in Hulk. Kind of jumping ahead a little bit, then Vanko breaks out of prison, and initially I was like, of course he breaks out of prison because he's a super villain, but it's Hammer.
Hammer
orchestrates the whole thing.
I mean, that's not jumping ahead. That's right after Monaco.
People are on a different level. Yeah. He has this whole meeting with Hammer that they have some kind of meal, and he doesn't want to agree to helping him until he gets his bird flown in from Russia, which I'm like, if you've ever met a person that has a parrot or a cockatoo or whatever, like, I have somebody that I know in my life that had a parrot, and if, like, trust me, like, once you know that she had a parrot, like, it makes sense.
Is it who I'm thinking of?
Yes.
Okay.
Bird people are just a different level. They're not bad. Like, no shade if you have a bird, but they're just, like, bird people are just strange to me.
Oh, okay, this is actually interesting. So, not to jump backwards a little bit, but I'm going to jump back a little bit. While filming the fight scene in Monaco, Mickey Rourke couldn't get the hang of the whips to do it in, like, a certain time. So they played Crazy loudly so that he could get to the rhythm.
I don't know if I know what that song is, or right off the top of my head.
I want to go back and play that song and see if the whips, like, line up with the rhythm. It makes sense now.
Speaking of fight scene soundtracks, the fight scene where after Rhodey breaks up the party, and the soundtrack is Another One Bites the Dust by Queen.
I'm sorry, that was just a giant Rock'em Sock'em robot fight. I'm sorry. Just when they were punching each other's faces...
True 90s kid.
It was literally Rock'em Sock'em robots. I'm sorry. One was red. You can't go with much more than that.
I feel like I've heard someone be referred to as War Machine, but I didn't realize it was Rhodes. Like, I've heard that name, and I don't know how.
Which, do you want to guess which suit he stole? That became War Machine?
The first one?
No, the first one's the giant one.
The Iron Giant?
Yeah, that's the first
one. The one that he made in the cave.
That's Mark 1.
Which one did he steal?
Mark 2. The silver one.
Okay.
The sleek silver one is the one that he stole.
I thought Mark 2 is the one he, like, colored. Like, the one in the
That's
first
Mark 3.
The one that he's wearing right now is
Mark 4.
Okay.
So he...
Sorry for not...
No. So every time he makes a new suit, he learns from the previous one. So kind of technically, he's on Mark 5 now because Mark 4 was the briefcase one.
Mm-hmm.
And so he learned to make it a little bit more dense so that when the whips hit it, it wouldn't break.
It'll be interesting to see how it's improved because I've seen some like pictures and stuff from like end of battle sequences from future movies that like he's pretty roughed up.
He learned like this is going to be slight spoilers for Spider-Man. Kind of like when a suit gets really cold, like in Iron Man 1.
Okay.
A future suit of his will warm him up.
Okay.
If his suit gets to a certain temperature or things like that, or if he falls from a great height, it'll be like shock or absorbent and things like that.
I did really like the process of him kind of, so he has this palladium poisoning and he's kind of going through a process of like, he thinks he's dying. Or, well, he doesn't think he's dying, he is dying.
He is dying. His blood.
And so he's kind of like in a big, like, you know, F everything, you know, like burn the world down kind of, like he's being very reckless.
Mm-hmm. Like his blood toxicity level was in like,
but like,
I think like highest it went was like 60 something.
It's interesting that he's, you know, like drinking very heavily and partying and all of this stuff, and it's very reminiscent of people spiraling like mentally.
He is dying, so he's trying to live his life.
No, I think it's him coping with depression is what it is.
Depression and him dying. His dying is also...
This whole battle sequence between him and Rhodes, I didn't need it. I felt like another excuse for a battle. Like, it just felt really out of place.
Which one?
The like, fight scene between him and Rhodes.
No, it was needed because it also...
he needed somebody to snap him out of it. Him.
He needed to be slapped with some sense.
Yeah.
Because he was going down a path, because he literally said at the beginning of the movie, no one would have this technology for 10, 15 years, and then literally there was a whiplash with an arc reactor. So he was also depressed from that and a bunch of other stuff, so he just needed some sense beat into him.
So he's found at this donut place, which is apparently like they wanted a place that's like super iconic LA.
Yeah, because Stark is actually the first on-screen Marvel character on the West Coast. Most of the others are New York. Captain America's New York, Hulk's New York, Hawkeye's New York, Spider-Man's New York.
I've never been to LA, but this would be a fun like little
yeah.
I'm sure it's very popular amongst Marvel fans to go to this donut place.
I mean, in all honesty, it's a 24-hour donut shop, so I'm guessing a lot of people, I mean...
They might even have a, like, Iron Man themed donut. But I would be very intrigued to go.
When meeting with the shop's owner, who liked the idea, and the owner initially suggested Stark flies through the donut.
I think that would have been a funny touch.
Yeah.
So he has a meeting with Nick Fury in this scene. And I don't understand. So, okay, you were talking about how this is the scene that makes you not think that the Incredible Hulk is canon.
So,
we covered it because technically it is, but Matthew doesn't believe it should be.
So, my whole issue with... I don't have an issue with Hulk being part of the MCU. I don't. It's just continuity. So, at the end of the in-scene trailer for Hulk, it's Iron Man...
If you missed that episode, go back and listen to it.
It's Iron Man talking with General Ross. Iron Man saying, we are building a team. But in Iron Man 2, he doesn't...
The team isn't there yet.
The team, or not even there. Iron Man doesn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. The team isn't a thing yet.
No, the team isn't a thing because S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't want Tony Stark. Tony Stark doesn't want to be a part of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Because there's a thing later where he sees his file and he's listed as reckless and narcissistic and all this stuff, and S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't want him.
No, S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't want Tony Stark, so that's why I have an issue with Hulk being part of the MCU, because in that scene, Tony Stark says, we, not, I know people.
And we know for a fact that in Hulk, that Iron Man 2 hasn't happened yet, correct?
It's in the 6 months span.
Okay, so you could say you could say that end credit scene in Hulk is like a huge time jump.
No, because the in-scene credits always take place before the next movie.
Yeah.
Or take place during. But
you could say it's after he agrees.
But all of the others have been like a slight scene.
It's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't see it because we also don't see General Ross until Captain America Civil War again. It's the next time we see General Ross. So it's going to be another in the MCU
4 or 5 movies?
No. Civil War is after Age of Ultron.
Okay.
So probably 6 or 7.
I said again, reiterating, finally a female supporting character with agency.
I wouldn't even say supporting character.
She becomes a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But like, I was so excited to...
It was introducing her.
I was so excited to see Black Widow. Well, is she Black Widow yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's been Black Widow since she joined S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, okay. But like, I'm just so excited to see Natasha just, like, tell it like it is. She's very much, like, this is who I am. She's, like, very, very in her own, like, she's her own person. And I really like that. I don't, however, love that she is, I won't go too deep into this because this is just not what this is about, but, like, I don't love how, like, how they shoot her sometimes.
But, I mean, that is
it's very... It's very, like, overly sexual.
Yeah, but that's how her outfit is in the comics
I get it. But, and even Scarlett Johansson has spoken up against that. Like, she didn't love that in hindsight. I was really hoping that they weren't trying to make Rhodes a villain, and I said he better betray Hammer. And I'm so glad that he did. This movie had so many hilarious one-liners. It's not really a one-liner, but I love when Tony Stark is making the element, and his robot just goes, like, he motions where he just, like, he's like, gimme.
Yeah.
It's so funny. If you know the scene, you know what I'm talking about.
I don't want to go into why Coulson is obsessed with the S.H.I.E.L.D. You will learn more about that in the Avengers. On why he's obsessed with Captain America's shield.
It only took Pepper Potts becoming CEO to get some agency, and she finally learns how to freaking argue. She says, because he comes into her office and he says all this stuff about, like, I, and she's like, I need you to stop saying I. Also, I love the, that he gives her a thing of strawberries, not realizing that she's allergic to strawberries. I thought that was an interesting touch, because he, like, either doesn't realize it or doesn't care.
Yeah.
And it just, like, really paints a picture.
Yeah.
I'm no scientist, but I don't think synthesizing a new element is that simple.
It's not, in all honesty.
And, like, they've broken down like, real scientists have broken down the physics behind it.
Yeah. But, I mean...
It's fictional. But the scene where he realizes that his dad was trying to send him a message, and there's a scene where he's watching the uncut footage of his dad making the presentation, gave me, like, big Walt Disney vibes.
Yeah.
And apparently it was actually, like, he took inspiration. There's a really famous video, I'm sure you can look it up on YouTube. There's a really famous video of Walt Disney introducing the idea for Epcot. And the expo, he's introducing the idea for the expo, and just the way that the shot is framed, his suit, the diorama thing behind him, it's very reminiscent of this video of Disney. And I thought that was a really cool kind of parallel. And even the dome building kind of is reminiscent of that they fight in at the end. It's sort of reminiscent of the Epcot ball.
So when Hammer starts berating Ivan for failing to complete the drones, Vanko replies in Russian, and his comment roughly translates to "you talk too much."
There's also a thing that
Which
Natasha says
funny.
later. There's a thing that Natasha says later that where she says something in Latin, and it has a translation roughly to, it says something like, "It's not always what it seems," or something like that. I do think Vanko is so much cooler looking without the drone suit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he's so much cooler with, like, the whip harnesses.
Yeah, but, I mean, he needed to be able to actually
fly and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't really have a whole lot to say about this final battle sequence.
It was interesting. I do like...
I just don't have many points to...
So, I like how all of the robots were slightly different to each other.
Yeah.
So, like, there was the Navy one that had more of, like, missiles that you would find on a Navy ship. Or, like, the Army had a sniper. The Air Force flew better.
Yeah.
Things like that. So, that they designed each robot for each particular branch, but even modified them for each individual.
There's a fun
separately.
fact somewhere in here about how they Vanko tells Hammer that he's going to teach the drones to salute, and the word salute in Russian is very similar to the English word for fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to teach them to something about fireworks. There's also a cameo by Elon Musk in this movie. I didn't really want to touch on Elon Musk just given everything that's going on with him right now. I don't really care to talk about that deeply about him. But I also learned that Elon Musk founded PayPal today.
I didn't know that.
Dude, that's news to me. Overall, I don't really have a ton to say about this final battle sequence. Do you want to touch on a little bit about that little boy?
Yeah, so
there's a shot of a young boy in an Iron Man mask that is about to get attacked by the drone. You don't see his face.
No, so for a long time, when Tom Holland's Spider-Man was first introduced, it was a fan theory that was Tom Holland's Peter Parker. And it's been confirmed, but
more so what I think it is that they did it not realizing the implications of it, and then they just decided later that it was Peter Parker.
Yeah.
But this expo takes place in Queens. Peter Parker lives in Queens.
Mm-hmm. Takes place around the time he would have been
a child.
5 or 6, maybe 7.
Yeah. So, I mean, the timeline fits.
Yeah.
And you never see the little boy's face. They could have had that planned all along, but... Oh, the expo was inspired by the World Fair, which is, I think, pretty obvious. I really loved the little inclusion of the little missile that, like, Rhodes tries to shoot at Vanko, and it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And they call it the ex-wife. Yeah, do you have any...
There's not a... That's the thing with this movie. It wasn't explaining a lot. It was more...
It felt like a setup movie. It felt like interstitial. Overall, I liked it. I did not like it nearly as much as the first Iron Man movie. All 3 movies that we've watched so far are so different.
Yes.
But, like, just first time watch, I would definitely rewatch Iron Man before I would rewatch Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought the story was a lot better. I thought this one was funnier for sure, and I really loved the inclusion of Black Widow.
Mm-hmm. It was to introduce Black Widow before...
But it felt like setup.
It was. It was setting up Black Widow for the Marvel movies.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm afraid I don't have a lot to say.
No, there's just not a lot in this movie because it's not...
It felt like filler.
I want to say filler. It's more building up to the Avengers. So it's. I mean, this one, the first one showed Iron Man actually like trying to help people, and then this one was more of Iron Man at his lowest.
Yeah,
to build him back up.
I liked Tony Stark as a character in the first one better.
Yeah.
But I also really liked the history behind Stark Industries and the whole Disney connection. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, the end credit sequence.
Yeah, so the end credit sequence, I don't want to spoil too much, but it deals with
So basically they find Thor's hammer in New Mexico.
Yeah, I'm not going to elaborate more than that.
That's just a fact. That's just what happens.
Yeah, it's... In the movie, that scene is going to be different.
I will say Thor is one that, out of all of them, is the one I know the least about. All I know is he is a Norse god that comes from space. It's like, basically, he just rolled his eyes.
That's, like, not even remotely accurate at all.
That's literally my only knowledge of...
That just hurt my brain. Comprehending that. He comes from Asgard, which is, like...
It's like another dimension, basically. Just give it to me. He comes from space.
Fine. He comes from outer space. He's a sparkly alien. Better? No,
But yeah, our next episode will be on the first Thor movie, which is directed by Kenneth Branagh, a.k.a. Gilderoy Lockhart. So I'm excited about that.
Are we even sure that he directed it?
Do you have anything you would like to say?
No.
All right. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
If you would like to send us any feedback, you can follow us on Instagram at @thefanclub_podcast or Twitter at @fanclub_podcast. You can also discuss each episode with us on our subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/thefanclubpodcast. And make sure you tune in every Marvel Monday.